Two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, and we are. We are. Is this the? Yeah, this is the final film in our antique antique April series. Our themed month of antique April. This is Brandon's choice. Unfortunately, he was unable to join us due to family stuff going on, so we'll just leave it at that. But it is a film that was filmed in 1960 that uh, almost disappeared for a little bit, but has become a classic, uh, especially in certain circles. And I know that Criterion picked it up. I know they're going to have a Blu-ray release soon for the very first time.
I think it may even be getting a
It might
4K
be a reprint.
release.
It might be the 4K release.
Yeah.
Yes, because I think it got a Blu-ray release already. But I know for many years the DVD for the Criterion release itself was out of print for quite a while. I ended up getting my copy for 50, which is to me still expensive for one DVD. But in any case, the film is directed by Michael Powell. Let's bring up the IMDb. Karl Heinz Bohm, otherwise known as Karl Bohm, Anna Massey, Moira Shearer, among others, Maxine Audley, Brenda Bruce, Miles Malson, Esmond Knight, Martin Miller, Michael Goodlife, Jack Watson, Shirley Ann Field, Pamela Green, John Berard, and many others. So, let's see what IMDb says about the film real quick. I know it was very short. A young man murders women using a movie camera to film their dying expressions of terror. So, Tammy, was this a first time watch for you?
No, I believe I've seen it before. Um, yeah, it was kind of freaky. Um, the guy's kind of creepy. Yeah, it is definitely a different take, I guess you might want to say, like on a slasher movie, you know. But it was okay, like you had said something about Psycho coming out at the same time, I guess you could they're not the same, but you could put it as this was kind of like, I think, newer for this um type of stuff at the time, this concept was maybe new at the time, but I found it interesting.
Okay.
I certainly did not mind watching it. I like, but I like older movies and older suspense or thriller and stuff like that. I think a lot more than some of the newer stuff. So
Well, and I know at the time that this film came out, a lot of people were against it. In fact, it was downright banned and censored for reasons of their own. It was also the first film that evidently in Britain's history where they actually had full frontal nudity in there. So that was another thing that to me, Britain is known for its snobbery and turning up their nose at films if it's not exactly gentlemanly like, So to me, I think this film was tame compared to other movies I've seen. So that being said, Jake, was this a first time watch for you?
Oh yeah, this is definitely a first watch. Obviously, at this point, I know the reputation of the movie pretty well. I know it's been mentioned a number of times on this channel as one of the prototypical. It's not really, I think, it's not really a slasher film, but I can see why people cite it along with Psycho and a couple other movies as being very important to the birth of the genre. And
What's funny is it feels like it's almost like an Italian giallo film from that type of filmography. Then you know,
you could say,
wouldn't you say just a little bit?
well, I mean, you know Giallo a lot better than I do, but from what I've seen, yeah, I could see that. It's but yeah, overall, it's kind of a strange film. It's a little off-putting in some ways, and I could definitely see how people at the time would have been, I guess, scandalized is almost too kind of a word for it. Especially as you pointed out, in Britain, where the film came out, it probably wouldn't have fared any better in America, to be honest. But I'm sure there are Italy, for example, it might have done just fine. Who knows? But definitely. And I know we're not 100% sure if Dustin will be on tonight, but he definitely wanted to comment on the fact that it could have been this film that everyone talked about instead of Psycho, but this one got buried and Psycho became a hit. And it really does pose an interesting what if. You know what I mean? Like, it could have gone very differently for the horror genre or movies in general if this one had been even on equal footing with Psycho. They did come out the same year, but they, like I said, they had very different receptions. It's interesting to think about, but overall, I'm glad I finally saw it. It's on my list of movies I might pick up this summer when Criterion movies go back on sale. Now that I've seen it, I have, I guess, even a little more interest in doing that. But especially because the version I saw, I felt like it could have been cleaned up a little bit. So if it is a particularly nice edition they're putting out, then, well, that might be a good time to get it. and and yes, for anyone at home who is interested in the movie and doesn't have it, there will be a Criterion re-release shortly before the next sale, so could be good.
It's definitely. Yeah. And is that pretty much your first impressions then?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. As far as my first impression, I know for the longest time this movie was my unicorn. that I was looking for a very good price. And unfortunately, even for a DVD, 50 was the lowest that I could come across at one point in time on eBay. And I sprung for it. And I believe that Tammy and I watched it uh, some time ago. It's been a while since I've seen it, so finally rewatching it again. I fully believe that people might have been a little nuts thinking that this was, uh, that disturbing. Yes, it is disturbing. Uh, the way that Carl acts about everything and the way he goes about, and the fact that it had a more of a POV point of view feel to it because you're looking at it, the murders through the gaze of the camera, which I'm not sure if that was done much at all. In fact, I wonder if this was the first film that ever did that full on like that. And these were a lot of like older metal cameras. There was there's quite a bit of um, stuff in that studio, that apartment that he had, of cameras and things of that nature and ways of developing film. I mean, he had something that looked like it was like a bingo uh, turnstile thing that he had strips of camera on as he was dipping it in the water to develop them. Um, but it was definitely a different film for its time, I guess. But I I I really and maybe they didn't want to show the full frontal nudity on Tubi because I didn't see any on that copy. I should have probably pulled out my copy just to see whether it showed that, but
I didn't see
I do
any
think a
either.
lot of the camera angles were uh, sleight of hand. You know, went only so far, and then there was a camera trick. To make you think that certain things happened and all that jazz. So, but that being said, Jake, you were saying something.
Was I?
Were you starting to say something
Oh, I think
a
I
moment ago?
commented. I think I commented you were talking about the nudity, and I was like, I read about that, but I don't remember seeing any. So maybe I missed it, or
Yeah,
maybe
I didn't see any either.
yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, I read about the full frontal nudity too, like as one of the things that Britain was. That's one of the reasons why it was censored in Britain, because it had that, and there were ideas of sadism and things of that nature, and you know, evidently they just didn't show this kind of thing on film. Uh, you know, but that being said, let's go into the plot a little bit more. Uh, so there is uh, a very beginning. Let's see. In the very beginning of this film, there is a victim. He meets Dora, a prostitute, and he covertly films her with a camera hidden under his coat. Um, and it's showing from the point of view of the camera viewfinder. He follows her into her flat, murders her, and later watches the film in his personal dark room. Uh, a back room he converted to be able to develop his films without getting caught. Um, and apparently, the following morning, well, let's just talk about our main character here for a moment. Mark Lewis was played by Carl Bohm. Um, he then uh, he films the police's removal of Dora's corpse from her home and poses as a reporter. But having seen the movie and seen Mark, what do y'all think about Mark as a character? Jake, what do you think about Mark as a character?
He sounds suspiciously like Kif Kroker from Futurama. Well, he's an interesting character. He's weird and comes off as more than a little creepy with some people. I'm still not 100% sure why his neighbor gets so hot over him, but actually, he seems to do fairly well with the ladies for someone who is so socially awkward. But he definitely is very socially awkward. He's very retiring. He does, he's in a
Well,
way,
yeah,
especially once you find out more about him, he becomes a sympathetic character. But he is kind of, I give the movie kind of props for having such a hard to pinpoint character, I guess you could say.
well, it turns out that our Mark Lewis, he actually, even though he is a tenant, these are his father's holdings, and he leases the rest of the place out to tenants through an agent, evidently, and then poses as a tenant himself. So that's one thing I'm not sure if you caught. Um, but that's one thing that found interesting after reading up about it a little bit. That he, unbeknownst to the other tenants in the building, he acts like like he is just another tenant, you know, whereas he is in fact the landholder uh, of of these apartments, you know. Um, but that being said, what do you think about that angle? Tammy, what do you think about Mark Lewis as a character?
I think he's a little strange. He's he definitely tries to please or impress people. Because he's overly polite in some instances, and in other instances, he follows people around with a camera and they don't know whether how to react either. So you know, it's just his personality is kind of all mixed up that way. Because some people don't, I think are if they don't like this or don't like that when he talks or when he comes across, he's extremely nice and extremely polite. So then they don't usually then take offense anymore about things, you know. But
Yeah,
and other people have in the movie had said that he seems like a little off or a little strange, you know. So I think he's I think he's a mixture of both, you know. Um, I think in order to not seem so strange, he overcompensates by being the polite and the nice, you know. And I think as far as trying to be a tenant like everybody else is, he doesn't want to stand out, you know.
well, yeah, I think he wants to fit in and not be like an overbearing person or whatnot. So, um, obviously, after his father or whatever died, uh, uh, he had to loan the place out for money, and well, what did y'all think about that first murder per se? Jake, if you could say anything about it, was it a bloody murder, or was it something that you could actually watch?
Oh, there wasn't anything in here I couldn't watch. I mean, they didn't really show a lot. Uh, you know, um, the first murder, it was interesting. I mean, it kind of, I, I think it kind of set me up to think that the movie would be a little different than it was. It kind of starts off with the direct POV of the killer. You're watching this scene where you know something is about to go down, and you're watching this woman who's clueless about what's about to go down. And it's an interesting sequence. Like I said, it kind of set me up to think the movie was going to be a little different than it ended up being, but a bait and switch of sorts is not uncommon in the movies. I mean, hell, Psycho had a huge bait and switch where our lead actress ends up getting killed halfway through the movie. So it this one was a minor compared to that. So but in terms of doing a POV sequence to kick things off, that was a really interesting way of doing it. And yeah, I think overall it worked out fairly well.
Okay. What about you, Tammy? What did you think about the first murder? Was it done pretty good?
Yeah, I think so. Cause sometimes I think, how do I put it? You can get just as much out of a gory, bloody scene as you can get out of one that's not. You know, where you don't actually see all the blood and gore, and you use your imagination. So, um, I mean, I I've seen my share of actual slasher blood and gore movies and everything. It's sometimes I like it. In some movies, I like it better where you don't see all that and you know what happened, you know, but you don't have to see all of that stuff to know what happened, you know. So
Okay. Well, after posing as the reporter, we find out that Lewis is a member of a film crew, um, and he aspires to become a filmmaker himself. So, That's something that we also have to bear in mind. So I know that he says that he is working on a documentary whenever asked. Um, he also works at a part-time photography place where soft porn and pinup pictures of women sold under the counter. Um, so, what do y'all think about that job of his? Um, he's always late,
His little side
and
hustle with the news shop.
yeah,
Well, you saw the picture I posted on there where the older gentleman comes in, very obliquely asking for. I think he said a friend told him this was a place he could come for viewing. I think it was how he said it, and
yep.
then the guy, he ends up buying the whole book, and the guy neatly wraps them up and turns it around, and the envelope has stamped on the front educational books, I think it was. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I thought that was hilarious. I was like, that is truth in advertising if ever I've seen it.
I thought he said something. I thought he said something like this. I heard this is a place where I could get the news
Oh,
or something.
I thought you said get some views, but yeah, it might be. It might have said the news,
Because he was
but
trying to like say it under,
right,
disguise.
yeah.
Yeah, and he's an interesting character when he comes in because you know he he's looking at some of the pictures, like some of them he likes and some of them he doesn't, but then he's like, oh fuck it, I'll just see what the whole lot is like, and I think he says something like 5 quid, um or something like that. Oh, and I also remember the girl and the first victim in the very beginning. Um, she said something to the effect of whatever will be going on between them being the amount of 2 quid. And I also think that the lady coming down the stairs, she didn't really get um, much of a look at him when he went up the stairs. So, and I think that's something that the cop later said something about while they were on their way to the uh, uh, second victim
Well,
later on.
the lady coming down kind of smirked because I think she thought it was funny that he was filming her going up the stairs. Filming her from behind. I think, I think
Yeah.
she smirked a little bit about that as she was coming down.
Uh,
So I think that's why that maybe she didn't have much to say either because she was paying more attention to him with the camera and watching her go up the stairs from behind her. And I think this lady thought it was amusing, so she wasn't thinking anything except for he's filming her going up, filming her from behind going up the stairs.
well, I suppose at least he wasn't going up Periscope. uh, but in any case, um, reason being is there used to be I think cameras that you would be able to stick underneath and get underwear shots or whatnot from people. So
I don't think those
uh,
were really a thing at the time.
you don't think those were a thing at the time? No, I don't think they were either. I think the cameras that he had were antique. Uh, Well, they were probably brand new at the time, but they're antique now. But in any case, we do have a film that he seems to be helping to have being a well, he called it a a camera focuser, if I remember correctly, later on. But I think before the next victim, we have the introduction of the neighbor girl from downstairs. It is her 21st birthday party, and she seems to notice him
Well, it's
as he
kind of
comes in
hard.
and out of the
Well, it's kind of hard not to with this picture that I have up here of him just looking right in the window.
yeah.
Yep, yep.
And I know right away the blind mother doesn't like him or at all. But I actually find Helen to be very precocious. She comes upstairs and she really is rather forward for a woman. She's all touchy all over his stuff, like as she's in there, you know. Um, and seeing his reaction to her while she's uh, you know being all curious, uh, no one has ever been up there in his lair and touched his stuff and been as close to much of his private things as anyone has before, and she's just uh, 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 you know can't help but touch things, and he's an introvert, she's an extrovert, you know what I mean? So it's kind of a clash of character, um, but I think from a distance he actually grows. And I think he falls in love with her throughout the film. His character, I really do, because um, I think he has respect for her, especially since he doesn't want her to be in the light of the camera, or she tries to turn the camera on herself a couple of times, and he's like, "No, I would never," and things of that nature. But they grow rather close to each other. Um, and she thinks that he might be someone to help her with her book. She's what was it that she was trying to write? She was trying to write something about a magic camera or something of that nature. Um, but I also know that she was getting pretty chummy with the other neighbor that lives in their place at first. Um, and what do y'all think about the blind mother and the other neighbor? Jake, what did you think about those two characters?
Are you talking about the other neighbor, the guy that just shows up from time to time?
Yeah.
He's the guy that just shows up from time to time. That's it. That's his role.
Yeah.
The mother is interesting. It's clear that she knows something's not quite right with Mark. She knows something's up. We find out later that she's apparently been peeping on him, even though she's blind. But she's also apparently unhappy with life and spends most of it partially drunk. Uh, so I'm not sure I really have a.
Yeah, because she does mention the price. She does mention the price of whiskey.
Yeah, yeah. What was that? That was a pretty good interchange there, and I don't remember precisely how it went. But yeah, she's fairly interesting. Like I said, I don't think it's, but she says like they're talking about him, and she's like, I don't trust a man who walks quietly. And Helen's like, well, he's shy, and she's like, his footsteps aren't, they're stealthy. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's a good, that's a pretty good way to say it there. But I was curious. I'm gonna look real quick and see if I can
If there
find.
was a quotation of some sort.
Yeah, because that was. Oh yeah, here we go. Uh, Helen, yes. Oh, it doesn't matter. Mother, what's worrying you? The price of whiskey. It's like that obviously wasn't what worried her, but that was her. Another good verbal interchange. Going back briefly to Mr. Peters, the guy at the newsstand. I don't know if you said this already,
Yeah.
Dave, and I apologize if you did. But Peters meets him. Got a question for you. Which magazine sells the most copies? Mark's like, those with girls on the front covers and no front covers on the girls. I'm like, so true.
Right.
But anyway. Yeah.
But yeah, so um during this initial birthday party meeting is where she pushes him to give her a birthday present of a viewing of something that he filmed. But instead of doing so, he brings down a canister that we uh, learn is actually not filmed by him, but by his father. Because these are various moments of time where he would uh, film his son in uh, terror of certain things, and he would tell him not to cry uh, from time to time, even though he was instigating him into being fearful of the things that he was doing to him, you know. And it looks like he had filmed his mother, and filmed his mother's predecessor, and uh, other things of that nature. So I thought it was interesting that he was showing her bits and pieces of his past, instead of films that he had actually done. Like he had wanted her to know a little bit more about him, so that she was more at ease around him. So I think that was an interesting moment that he was sharing with her, but he still somewhat made her a little wary before she went back down to the party. I think, even though she still liked him after that. Um, but what did y'all think about that moment? I thought it was interesting.
I think the reason he did that though is, he didn't want to scare her away by showing what he was really filming. I think he figured that she would not be interested and it would scare her, and that she would really think he was a freak then if she knew what he was filming. So he thought he was playing it
Well, and
safe
he also,
by.
yeah, go ahead.
I think he thought he was playing it safe by showing what he did.
Okay. And also in showing her this, he also told her that most of his childhood into his adult life, he didn't have any sense of privacy. You know,
Yeah.
so I think he was trying to tell her that, which is why he kind of carried around his camera like Linus and his blanket from Peanuts. You know.
Right. Now imagine if they had a character like this on Peanut. Actually,
Right.
honestly, you could almost see Linus growing up to. Because, I mean, after all, that with that bitch of a sister he had, he was going to grow up scarred. But anyway,
Peppermint Patty, or is that
no,
Lucille?
Lucy was a sister.
Lucy. Yep.
Lucy, one of the most horrifying people in all of children's films.
Take that. Oh, brother. Anyways,
Yeah.
um,
Anyway,
but moving forward, I believe the next sequence is where he does, in fact, reach out to a model. I guess she meets him at the studio, and he goes about and places uh, objects on X's in a way that he wants things to be filmed, and uh, he basically wants to film her fear, and I think she also knows this. So she told him, "Well, I don't really feel like I'm afraid of anything, you know." And he's like, "Well, what if I uh, told you about it? Someone who wanted to kill you, and uh, you didn't know that, but uh, he was walking towards you like this, holding this up against you, and his his camera easel stand. He could take the leg off of it, and it turns into a spike, which is an interesting weapon. Um, so when I think he also did what his father used to do to him, which was shine a light at him in his eyes. And I think that's something that he does to her on top of filming uh, and on top of walking towards her with that spike towards her neck. Um, and ultimately, we don't see the final act, but she falls and we hear her fall. And then it's not until later when they're actually filming, and the one actress is actually she wants a blue trunk, and they pull the trunk forward, and that's when they find the body of that model. And he actually goes and like films her reaction while everything is going on. And then of course we get the cops and the chief of police are on their way to the scene of the crime. And yeah, so what do y'all think about that whole the whole model scene, and uh probably going up to the moment of the body discovery? Jake, what did you think about that?
you talking about first the scene in the studio where he's making a film, and then The follow up.
Yes.
It's interesting. I mean, I feel like this is one of the weird things in the movie is how, and I know part of this is we are privy as the audience to certain things that make his intentions and actions feel a little different than they probably would to people who are there in the moment. But he just really seems creepy and untrustworthy much of the time. So it's interesting to see how trusting people are of him. And this woman, it seems to have no sense of danger at all until well into this sequence. And I'm feeling like
Yeah,
maybe she
she even
what's
said
up?
that he makes her feel at ease. She even
Yeah,
said he makes her feel
yeah,
at ease, you know?
exactly. And I feel like I'm not 100% sure I agree with you, lady. But, at one point, she starts to realize something's up. But that's pretty close to the end there, where he finally springs that on her and makes it, it goes from kind of dancing around it to just being straight up, hey, this is where I'm actually coming from. And yeah, it was interesting. Now, I will admit there was a bit of tension, almost amusing tension. It's kind of a combination of tension and amusement, I guess, to the scene after where the director is fed up with the horrible job his lead actress has been doing, and he basically wants to do reshoots because he needs more comedy in the scene. And then, like, so they're doing this whole thing with the trunks, and the guy clearly is struggling with this one trunk because for some reason it's a lot heavier than all the others. And then the woman looks in and she just screams, and I
Faints
believe the what
and faints, and the director's like,
right.
"You're fainting in
What,
the wrong scene."
yeah. The director finally is like, she finally faints. And it's for the wrong scene, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty funny. But yeah, it's an interesting scene overall, and the way that he plays it with the cops, I'm actually intrigued. I mean, he almost gets busted because he's hanging up in the rafters, and some pins fall out of his pocket, and they almost
Yeah.
catch him filming them. But other than that, it's interesting how he walks right into the interview with the cops and says, "Here's my camera. I'm sorry, I was taking pictures." And you see the one cop thinking about it the whole time he's talking to the other one, but he finally ends up getting his camera back. So it was an interesting set of events.
Well, and when the cops went back to the scene of crime, they found the radio that was playing that somewhat like tribal music. Uh, and the one dude started dancing to it, and that was a little bit comical. But yeah, and then he looked back at the cop, and he was like, "Oh, sorry." uh, but yeah, evidently it was some music that must have been popular at the time. But in any case, um, yeah, he almost did get caught with those two pens and the flashlight that dropped. And then, of course, he's climbing down the ladder, and he's flashing the flashlight. You almost think that he's going to get caught, but he wasn't. Uh, and then, of course, they show that um, he is actually taking the relationship of Helen to kind of an almost level relationship where she actually convinces him to leave his camera back at home, and they go out on a date. And I know the mother, she allows it to happen, and he brings her back home early, and they actually have a nice time, um, evidently on that date, or whatever. But he comes back, and that's when the mother, she thinks that her mother has actually gone to bed early, and he goes into his room, and he's about to watch like one of his snuff films, and I could see someone in the background, and it was her mother, and she basically kind of confronts him, and tells him that she's actually this isn't the first time she's been in that room. In fact, she's visited it every night, and she wanted him to play whatever he was watching, and he gets a little weird for a little bit, you know, because he starts filming her, and she starts getting a little scared. Uh, but then he stops himself, and he gets all nervous, and basically, ushers her out of the room. Uh, Tammy, what did you think about that moment? When his mother or her mother showed up.
I thought that was very interesting. Um, I don't know if it was just me or whatever. I guess um, it wasn't until she showed up, I guess, that is when I really realized how that she was totally blind. You know, I think, you know, I didn't totally realize it before because I think it was that I was thinking it was, because of the drink, how she was acting, being drunk. But when I realized that she was totally blind when she showed up, it was just like, wow, she's very perceptive for being totally blind, of him, And yes, he did not like her touching everything, even though she did not really know exactly what she was touching, but he knew what she was touching. And
Yeah,
she even though she couldn't see that what she was touching, he still was afraid that she would know what it was. And you could tell she's very protective of her daughter because I think because she is blind, she's got they always say if you lose one of your senses, all the rest of your senses are heightened. So I think she's got this heightened sense about him that he is not he's no that there's something wrong here, that there's not that he should not be with her daughter. And she does even say that she doesn't want him to see her daughter anymore. So I think her doing what she was doing was trying. I think she was trying to push him to act out. Thinking, then she'd go, "Aha! I knew there was something about you, or whatever."
react a way that she could immediately like squelch the relationship in the bud. Even though I think she knew that at least as far as her daughter was concerned, she had already, I think, set her mind on seemingly to have a relationship with Mark, so to speak. Um, a- at least in her mind, and he basically, I think he was being honest though, that they would not have to move because of him. And I think at the end of the day, I think he really respects the mom and respects Helen enough that at least up until the last moment, he was actually able to hold his own against his obsessions and his um, his habits of murder, so to speak. But I believe that he was beginning to unravel even then, um, because he made a mistake, I think, with the actress girl from the news job that he was supposedly supposed to do pinups for this uh, one girl, and I don't think that she was very, what is it, nice to him. It didn't seem like this one actress was being very nice to him at the time. So I believe um, he just cracked at that moment. What did y'all think about that killing? I think that was kind of like his biggest mistake. Um, if he wanted to not get caught, per se. What about you, Jake? What did you think about that news girl killing? There wasn't much of anything there.
No, it wasn't much. And I don't know. I kind of wondered if maybe he was just, I don't know, maybe he is already starting to wonder. I think you said earlier that he kind of falls for Helen. And I think at this point he was already kind of thinking he might not, that she might be in danger if something doesn't happen to him. So I don't know, he might have already been thinking about just bringing it all to an end.
Yeah.
And killing her may have been an attempt to get one last thrill before it was all over. I'm not 100% sure. To be honest, I have, for some reason, very little recollection of that particular scene.
Okay. Well, what happens is she's a little. Um, I know she isn't exactly polite to him, and then she lays back on the bed, and then we see him lock up and walk away. He's being followed,
Right.
obviously, by some dude in a trench coat,
Well, you interrupted
and
her
he's
date
just
night,
following her all
apparently.
around. Yep. And the body of the girl is discovered by the shop owner, and the police are called, and they we see them talking, and he is like, all I know is that she was supposed to sit for our photographer, and I found her exactly like this, you know. So then you see the cops are on the way to um, the place where Mark lives, um, and I believe that there is a moment where Helen actually, because there was also something that Helen had asked Mark to do, and I believe that he had done it for her. He shot pictures for her book, and she was coming to show him the book that she had published, and I believe she was excited to show it to him. And so when she went into that room, she wrote in it like a personal message, and she was waiting for him to show up. But she ends up being curious, turns on the uh, movie that evidently is still in the uh, uh, the movie projector, and she whatever played uh, got her really upset, and then she backed up into Mark, and Mark basically was trying to get her to calm down. He was like, "You're too frightened right now. Calm, calm down," and he was gonna usher her out of the room, but then he decided to tell her, "Okay, I killed these girls," because she asked, what did you do to these girls?" And he finally said that he had to tell someone, and he's sorry that it had to be her. So he basically, oh, and earlier he had actually had a conversation with an old man that was on the set. Evidently, he was either a producer or something like that, and he had asked him if he knew his father, and he told him who his father was, and he said, "Oh yes, I'd caught uh, 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 some of his lectures, and he was like, did you, evidently he was working, which I forget exactly what the old man called it. It was something phobia. Um, uh, trying to remember the exact name that he
What is
called
this?
it.
The condition
There was
Mark
an
has?
older. Uh, it was a name that the old man had referred to, that his father was actually studying towards it was some kind of phobia. I forget exactly what he called it, but it was some kind of phobia that had to do with the reaction to fear or whatnot.
Oh, the fear
Um,
of fear?
fear of fear, yes.
Did he have a name for
So
that?
he called it something. It was some kind of phobia, and I was trying.
Well, if it's a
I was
fear, then
trying
yes.
to remember your.
If it's a fear, then yes, it would be a phobia. I don't remember that. Maybe I missed what. Let's see
Yeah,
what.
he was in. Uh, he was up a ladder. This old man
Okay,
was
well,
up a ladder, and
if you want to use the technical term, the fear of fear is phobophobia. Yeah,
I don't think it was that.
I don't
But
think
I'll
it
have
was
to go
that either.
back.
But that's the term for the fear of fear. Now, are you talking about the specialized term that they used for what Mark is experiencing, the sort of peeping Tom? Because they did mention that.
Yeah, but he went up on a scaffolding with this old man, and he was
Yeah,
talking with him about his father and all
yeah.
that jazz. And he mentioned some kind of phobia while he was up there, and I was trying to
Okay,
remember
well,
what exactly he
I
said. It
didn't
was some
catch
kind
it.
of
No,
Latin term for it. I didn't.
I didn't.
I caught it the first time I watched it, but I was unfortunately I should have written that down, but
I mean,
I
they
didn't.
mentioned this
Um,
specialized term for Mark's condition, which is not a phobia, it's a philia. It's a love of something, and that's scopophilia. But I don't remember if they mentioned phobia.
Scopophilia. I think that might have been it.
Yes. Phobia and aphilia are polar opposite things. They are, but that's what I was trying to get at. That's what I thought you were talking about. But no, that is
Yeah,
absolutely not a fear. That is his obsession. That's his love, if you will.
yeah.
Yeah. And
But
scopophilia was the
in any
term.
case,
Yeah.
um, he basically booby trapped the whole room for his own self. I guess he had prepared for this because he had never experienced this fear that having. He was having other people react to. Um, so he, uh, in a sense, it was kind of like a Frankenstein moment because he pulled a switch on the wall, and then all these cameras like started to go off while he was running towards because he had actually stuck his spike uh, axle thing that his camera would held into the wall, and he expected himself to run straight into the spike. And right before he was to do that, he said to Helen, "Helen, I'm afraid." And then she was like, "No, Mark, no." And he ends up pushing himself into it. And what's interesting is he's holding the side of his neck when it should have actually gone straight into his trachea, you know. But um, other than that the cops burst in the door, and you hear the audio of his father saying, "Don't cry," um, and you hear him whispering back as a child, "Okay, okay, father," or something like that. In the end, which I honestly think was a good touch. Uh, I think I think it was an interesting ending. So, and did anyone else have anything else about that final climax? Tammy, what did you think about the climax?
Um, I don't know. I'm not sure what to say. um, I guess in a way, it was bound to happen. You know,
Okay,
he
I
was
was
gonna
kind of
get caught.
thinking like with all those cameras that went off while he was running towards that spike, it kind of reminded me of that beginning moment in Back to the Future when Doc had all those clocks on the wall. Well, this dude had like a bevy of cameras that flashed at him along the way, you know. So,
Well, and
what
you
did you
knew
think
it
about
was
that?
to be. He was about to get caught. You know, he was bound to get caught. You know, so
So, what did you think about that final climax, Jake?
That was interesting. I mean, like I said, and he kept telling her, she was all kind of freaking out, and he's like, please don't show me fear. I won't hurt you if you don't show me fear, if I can't see you afraid. And so it's very, he makes it very clear that he does not want to hurt Helen. Um, and so essentially he ends up throwing himself on the blade. It seems more for her than anything else.
Yeah.
There is probably a little bit of he's probably kind of tired of living with, even though he doesn't seem like he's necessarily been too upset about how things have gone. He definitely had kind of a messed up life, and he seems he's probably ready, to not be having to worry about it anymore. But yeah, he definitely has a kind of an interesting. He definitely has kind of an interesting setup there.
Oh yeah. So at the end of everything, what did we think about the production? Tammy, did you think that the production looked pretty good?
Oh yeah, everything looked pretty. Everything looked authentic. The clothing, of course, the cameras and everything. I thought they did. I like the idea of seeing it through the camera also like that. I thought that was unique. So, oh yeah,
Well, and
it
then
was.
later, actually hearing that the whole entire place had audio recordings in every single room, you know,
Oh yeah,
because that's one thing he told her and he showed her on that contraption that had all those audio clippings on reel to reel, you know, uh, uh, that okay, here's your room, here's dude's room, here's my room. Anything else, Tammy?
no, I think we kind of said everything.
Okay. What about you, Jake? What did you think about the production?
That was pretty solid. I mean, one one point that uh, I know again with I figure I'll go ahead and mention a couple of these things because Dustin typed a whole bunch of stuff up, and one of the things he said was that this was more of a modern feeling film than Psycho, and I agree with it. It has sort of a dark and dingy look to it that seems more like something from the 70s. Psycho had more of a slick production, typical of Hitchcock. Like he had a couple late. Frenzy was kind of more like this kind of movie. But Frenzy, I thought, was an atypical Hitchcock film in a lot of ways. So the idea that this might be a little more modern leaning certainly makes sense to me. I
And
did say it's kind of dingy and dirty looking, but that doesn't mean I'm not trying to take anything away from the production. It's a good looking production, but you know what I mean. Like it feels like it's embracing a seedier side of life, if that makes sense.
do
Is
you know whether this film influenced Psycho or Psycho influenced this
As
film
far
at
as
all?
I know, they were in production together. So I mean, not together, but you know what I mean, like at the same time. Like, let's
Okay.
see, Peeping Tom came out. When did
It
they
came
come
out in
out? Well, they
1960.
both came out in 1960. Peeping Tom premiered in London April 7. It had its official opening May 16 and apparently closed 5 days later, at least in England. Um, whereas Psycho came out in June. So technically this one was first, but we're talking like a couple of months. There is a chance that Hitchcock was influenced by this movie, but chances are he was already well into post-production with that film. So,
Possible.
yeah. And
Um,
also, this one bowed.
the whole reason why I ask is because
Yeah.
there is that moment where he's up on
Yeah.
top of in the rafters, and
Yeah.
you're seeing a shot like from below. And Hitchcock was known for those above below shots.
So it's quite probable that this director was influenced by Hitchcock. Michael Powell definitely was. Yeah, that's very possible, if not likely. And as far as, again, I feel like if there's a Hitchcock film that I think seems to vibe with this one, it's probably Frenzy. And Frenzy came out, I think, in 72. So it's quite possible Hitchcock did see this and kind of put it on the back burner. And eventually, when he made Frenzy, he might have been thinking about this. It's quite possible. But
okay.
I think it's much more likely that Powell was influenced by having seen multiple Hitchcock films over the years. That seems quite likely. And I do know, as far as filmmaker connections, apparently Powell is directed by was married for over a decade to Thelma Schoonmaker, who has been Martin Scorsese's editor from the get-go.
Because
So
Rope was filmed in 1948.
Yes,
which that was a heavily above below shooting film. You saw a lot of it from like a ceiling point of view, and I was thinking
Rope was absolutely a film with morally ambiguous protagonists, and you know there are people who might kind of empathize with Norman Bates, but in Rope, your protagonists were specifically murderers, and their mentor, Jimmy Stewart's character, is pretty ethically gray himself. The Rope didn't really have heroes. So I could definitely see Rope being an influence on this movie. There's no doubt. But
yeah,
who knows in the end. But yeah, as I was saying, I do know that this film, like I said, there is a direct familial connection, if you will, with Scorsese, and he has straight up said this movie was a huge influence on him. So it definitely has gone both ways in terms of not just the slasher genre. A lot of people saying this was a important milestone for the slasher genre, but it probably influenced films like Taxi Driver and some of the later Scorsese films. So, yeah, it's kind of fun. But yeah, but yeah, as far as the overall production, I thought it was effective. Without being anything particularly earth-shattering. I think they did a good job of incorporating this guy's love and obsession for cameras and that sort of thing.
Okay. As far as production goes for me, I thought that the production was pretty darn good. I mean, yeah, it definitely does feel like this was where Dustin said it was a modern film. I would say it feels like more of like a 70s type film than anything else. And
well,
I still feel like this has some giallo feeling to it.
I would say that generally when people talk about modern films, they kind of look at the end of the 60s, start of the 70s as being a major change from classical to modern cinema. There might be some out there that would dispute that, but I think that that's probably what he was meaning, and that's certainly what I was meaning. Because like I said, this to me looks like something right out of the 70s. But in terms of the sensibilities, the things that you just don't do that on film, sort of mentality that almost sunk this film as soon as it came out. This film was way ahead of its time. It was, if you will, modern because they went places that films just weren't supposed to go. You know what I mean?
It was definitely a film that was very much aware of its intentions while it was being made. I feel like it was a statement of sorts that the ideas behind it weren't exactly kosher to the culture of the time. So I don't. I think it was a movie ahead of its time. To be honest, before people were ready for it, you know. Um, and there are a lot of films that are like that, where I don't think that people are ready to view certain things if they always lived their lives as close to being in a test tube as possible, you know. Uh, uh, and that's how some people live their lives. They form their own little bubble, viewpoints and things of that nature, and they stick to them. And oftentimes, when they see something that's not quite what they were taught, then they're like, nope, nope, I'm not watching it. Nope, you can't get me to watch it.
Another Futurama connection. I choose to believe what I was programmed to believe. Yes.
I'll have to eventually see if I can't pick that series up. I've watched Simpsons, its predecessor, and I know I have 3 episodes of the robotic stuff, but I haven't entirely watched the show. And I know it had Simpsons influences and whatnot. Um, it looks like it would be an enjoyable romp to watch from start to finish. Um, although it probably wasn't as woke as Tripping the Rift was. um, but in any case, let's go on to music. Music was composed by a man called Brian Eastdale, and he had studied under Gordon Jacob and Armstrong Gibbs at RCM, Royal College of Music. He wrote his first opera, Rapunzel, at the age of 17, and at the age of 20 had the honor of having a Dead March procession he had written and performed for the London Symphony Orchestra under Sir Malcolm Sargent. Apparently, he served with the Royal Artillery during World War II and spent a lot of that time working as a composer for various government film units. His major film work was, of course, working for Michael Powell, and he worked some dramatic scores for Black Narcissus in 1947, and most famously for the Red Shoes. So, in 1948. But yeah, he he wrote he wrote some ballet scores, complete with innovations, as the mysterious Andes Martineau. So I guess that was a pseudonym of his. But did you have any questions about the music, or did you notice the music at all, Jake?
Oh, I noticed it. It was good. There were some nice jazzy numbers in there, and overall, it did its job well.
Okay. What about you, Tammy? Did you notice the music at all, or was that a
No,
factor
a
that you paid
little,
attention?
a little.
Okay. Heading into favorite scenes and our favorite characters. Did you want to start, Tammy, as far as favorite scenes and our favorite characters?
um, I think my favorite character is I forgot her name.
Was
Helen,
her name
right?
Helen?
That's what he like. Huh?
The chick Helen?
Yeah, yeah. Helen, right? I like her. She's just so ew, and when she gets so excited and she's all totally interested, and she's so naive. You know.
Yep.
Um, favorite scene. I actually got. I liked when he was doing that scene at the or making a scene at that with that girl, and she was playing the music and dancing all around, and he's trying to put the scene together and everything, and then she says she doesn't know how to act scared, and and he tells her what to do, what to think of and everything. I I like that whole thing. She's all dancing around and they're talking and just the music's going and he's trying to create this.
She's almost flirting with him too, a little bit, because she gets behind the camera and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm filming you, filming me,
Right.
and all that jazz.
I thought that was fun. I liked it.
Okay. Any other scenes?
Um, not really.
Okay. Heading over to you, Jake. Favorite character and or favorite scenes, if you had any.
Uh, Kind of hard to be sure of a favorite character in this one. Um, I mean, there is some sympathy for our protagonist, for Mark. He's a little bit, like I say, he's a little creepy, but there is some sympathy there. I If I have to pick a favorite, though, I think I'm going to go with the guy credited as elderly gentleman customer, that played by Miles Mallison, the one that comes in asking for the materials. And I have to say that's probably my favorite scene, in particular when he flips over the envelope and it says educational books. I just thought that was hilarious, and that's gotta be my favorite part of the movie. Um,
I imagine if you went to a peep show or a film place that would actually do that kind of thing, I imagine it wasn't exactly um, you know uh, kosher to publicly sell that kind of thing. So I give it credit for showing that kind of the underworld of that type of transaction. You know, which it
and
was
then
it was done with some taste.
they kind of tweak it with that teen girl coming in the middle of the transaction to buy something, and then everyone's kind of like, they don't do it, but you can almost see them looking around and whistling. But they didn't quite do that.
And that girl looked like so wholesome, like she was
Indeed.
down to
Yeah.
earth,
Yeah.
like she would have
But
been like on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or something like
But
that.
I think this is to your point, though, that they were doing this kind of in public places, but not publicly. Like it was definitely under the counter, as it were.
Yep. So, any other scenes or whatnot that you enjoyed?
I mean, there were other good moments too. And again, that comment that he made when the guy at the start of the scene about the magazines that sell the best, you know. But as far as I think the interaction with Helen and her mother, which included that comment about the price of whiskey, but just
Yeah.
that general interaction where you can see that this woman who can't see can actually see better than almost anyone else in the movie. I thought that was a pretty good scene too.
Okay. As far as favorite characters or favorite scenes, I'm not sure I entirely had a favorite character. I did like that old man walking in. Helen, uh, I don't know. Helen somewhat annoyed me. Like even if I would have known a girl like Helen, I wouldn't want her like just bursting into my room and touching all my shit, right offhand. There is a certain modicum of uh, may I touch this? May I see this? Askance. That to me is something that I think that everyone could relearn in this day and age. Instead of just being able to walk in, may I see this? May I pick this up and look at it? Things of that nature. She didn't do any of that, and that to me would have been a turn off a little bit. I mean, uh, although her interest was would have been cool, and all that jazz. To me, I liked the scene where he was actually showing her more about what his father did to him. Like I think at this point in time, uh, his father was dead. He was starting to, uh, you know, I think he was trying to finish his father's work, um, because he had been that close to his dad, even though we all know that uh, evidently whatever his father put him through was some form of abuse. You know, it was. I mean, he basically
Ah,
spent his life in his father's test tube.
yeah, I wouldn't say some form of abuse. I would say many forms of abuse.
Yeah.
It
Um,
was, yeah.
so I think having the first person to be able to uh, relent some of what happened to him, I think he kind of wanted to get it off his chest to someone, a little bit of what he went through. So I think this was an interesting ch- choice in uh, showing her something, and she was all questioning it and everything. So I think he kind of gave her a window into what his life was like, and to kind of explain a little bit about himself. He wanted to get to know her, but in order to do that, I think he needed to express a little bit of himself. So I think that was his moment to kind of you know go woe is me a little bit, um, in a sense. Uh, but other than that, I did enjoy that scene that you liked, Tammy. But I also thought that damn, did he have a lot of cameras to work with if he set up his, demise like that. He had said he had planned for this. He had expected this to happen. Um, so no matter what, he set in motion a chain of reaction where he had planned his death. I feel like he already had that in mind, like that moment that he had to go past the point of no return. He had an exit, you know. So, other than that, did anyone else have anything else to add about the film? No.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, hopefully you ladies and gentlemen out there have enjoyed our discussion. I know I do things a little different than some others. Hopefully I wasn't too long-winded. But let us know down in the comments what you thought of the film, what you thought of our discussion, whether we got it right or wrong, whether you have any comments on anything that was said or done. And like, share, and subscribe. And we'll definitely be back next week. Now, I know, Jake, you might not be here in time for next week's discussion, but I will say um, where what the film is. Um, so um, but let us go around and see what you guys do. Let's tell the audience a little bit about yourselves. So, Tammy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Um, I go on this channel and another one with my fiance David and talk about movies and listen to other people's ideas and thoughts and check out, a lot of times movies I haven't seen before, and it gets to be quite interesting. Plus, I have my own collection, and well, starting this weekend, it is show car season, and so I will be busy.
Alrighty. So you'll be able to bring out the bell of the ball again. So
Yep,
uh,
my 1972 Grand Prix will be out and about.
Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, I'm Kotobuki Jake. I'm the occasional co-host of Symptom Sim vs. World YouTube channel, dedicated primarily to physical media. And unfortunately, the actual primary host of the channel, Septum, couldn't be with us this week. But we know he's here in spirit. This was technically his movie choice, but definitely. And Dave, I'm sure you'll be presenting the actual movie for next week, but it's worth saying that Brandon's choice for next week is also the month next month is his choice, which is Strange May. And we have a few films that promise to live up to that moniker. And as for me, I do keep rather busy. I have a full-time gig that is occasionally supplemented by a little side hustle here and there, but keeps me pretty busy most of the time. But I did get a day off Saturday to go to a local plant sale, and then yesterday went way out into central Virginia to Cumberland State Forest and went on a really cool nature hike. And I'm now officially over 1,500 species recorded on iNaturalist. And I'm looking forward this weekend to a trip down to Asheville, North Carolina, where I will be able to add quite a few more species, I'm hoping. Not to mention visit family I haven't seen in some time. be visiting the Biltmore. Never been there before. I get to see a place where they filmed a scene from Hannibal, among other things. So, and that'll be why I may not be here next week, because chances are we'll still be on the road. But I am going to try and get that movie watched. So you may get some comments from me in the peanut gallery, if nothing else. And well, I guess that'll do for now. Yeah.
Alrighty. And my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey we've been having as we conclude our Antique April themed month. Yes, your theme.
One more thing before you wrap up. I do have one more thing before you wrap up, so I'll do it after you're done or now, whatever.
Sure, if you want to go ahead and
okay. For our channel, I do want to plug because there will be something theoretically on Septum Sin. It was supposed to be this week. I'm going to just say keep a lookout. I'm not going to guarantee it because I don't know for sure, but we already pushed back by a week our anime anticlimax discussion on Servant Service. That should be Wednesday. It may be next week, but just keep an eye out. If you missed it last week, you didn't miss it. It's still coming. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. So, my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So, thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey we've been having, as we have concluded our month of Antique April, which was chosen by Jake. So, thank you. It was a pleasure being able to contribute a film, be it as it may. So it was fun. Looking forward to this strange May. I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where mostly every Sunday we go on about different films as well. Just recently we did a discussion on Grease. So check that out on Delusions of Grandeur. It was fun. Next week on Delusions of Grandeur, we will be doing a Croatian animation called Cricket and Antoinette. It was a film that came out in 2023, so it should be interesting. It's going to be a blast. I also do some video pickups and video reviews from time to time, and I am working on getting a release out for my first anthology. And then hopefully, once everything dies down, be able to get back to filming for the second anthology in the series. So hopefully you guys can keep a lookout for when you might be able to buy a copy. And right now I'm getting copies out to the different people involved in the franchise, so to speak. So next week we are starting the Strange May, and we have an interesting lineup here, which I believe that the first is my choice. It is a animation, electronic animation of sorts, on the spectrum of like rank and base types, but it is a adaptation of the Hansel and Gretel story called Hansel and Gretel: An Opera Fantasy, although IMDb calls it just Hansel and Gretel. I remember it being an opera fantasy as well. So look forward to that. And we'll see you guys next month as we go in, as we kind of have some strange times out there in the real world. Might as well go a little strange next month. So, um, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Everyone say good night.
Good night.
Right.